Nicole and I, we were doing these parenting in a time of crisis discussions. And Nicole and I, we kept talking like, okay, we want to go deeper. We want to go deeper. And then there was this idea came up that, okay, because self-compassion, it's really something that doesn't necessarily come like naturally, right? It's not something that like we just have. Is that true? At least that's how I feel.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is why we get to practice that. And it is through that practice that almost like this compassion muscle can be built. So Dr. Libin is a mindfulness expert. She's an expert in compassion and self-compassion. And she's just spreading this wonderful information and word in her coaching, in her online presence. She has a book out there. The Sticky Brains was finally came out, right?
Yep.
That's great. And yeah, she's really there to cultivate focus, peace, and compassion, one breath at a time. And Dr. Libin's website is followyourbreath.com, right?
Yes.
Great. So thank you for your time this morning. And we're going to jump right in. So before we do actual practice, let's talk a little bit about compassion and particularly self-compassion. We are living at these unprecedented times where a lot of things are, finally, which is great, bubbling up to the surface in terms of discrimination, racial injustice, all these things, and people are out on the streets, and I really truly feel that energy, and it's great. I think it's amazing that people have their voice, and that we all get to go out there and do our own piece in this. The piece that I'm doing is I believe that if one is accepting oneself, one is compassionate towards oneself and others, we can have more peace and acceptance, embracing of differences in this world. So it really begins with each individual, and I believe it begins with children. That's why last week I talked a lot about peace education for children. So can you tell us a little bit about what is compassion? Like, how do you define it? And particularly, how is self-compassion different from just compassion in general?
Definitely. I think it's interesting because you said expert in self-compassion, and I think it's one thing to be an expert externally, and it's another thing to be an expert internally for myself. And in some ways, compassion for others is a lot easier than compassion for ourselves. So, I mean, I define self-compassion as the ability to take care of what you're feeling while you're feeling it. So my favorite image, and it's actually my favorite practice too that we can talk about, is the idea of holding yourself the way you'd hold a child, or the way you'd hold an animal, for those more inclined to want to, just the idea of caring for a small wounded animal, or caring for yourself the way you'd hold a baby. So it's not that it's always pleasant. It's not that you always want to do it. For anyone who's held a baby, when they're crying, it's you may feel frustrated. You may feel like, why is this happening? But you know that what that child needs in that moment is just to be cared for and to be held. And so for me, compassion for others, or self-compassion, is caring for our own experience just as we are, letting go of needing to fix it or analyze it or solve it or even do anything about it. But that first step, it's like you're saying, right? The first step is caring, is acknowledging and caring. And then if you want to do something about it, then you get to do something about it. But you can't change what you don't acknowledge or can't acknowledge.
That's right. Yeah. And so often, including myself, go into the problem solving mode, which is almost like problem solving mode is almost like the denial of the experience. Like, I don't want to experience this anymore. So let me figure out what I'm going to do to feel different. So you are saying, let's do the opposite. Let's embrace the experience. And I get this image of cradling, like you said, cradling, you know, really yourself in that love and compassion. Yeah.
Our brain, so the intellectualization or the rationalization, it's our brains trying to protect us. Like, our brains think, they're very smart in some ways, and they think that they can think their way through everything. And they do this in a way, like, it's, you know, I'm personifying the brain, but it does this in a way that is very natural and is very protective. It doesn't want us to feel pain. But the truth is that when you're already feeling something, the way through it is to feel it, right? There's that kid song, you can't go over it, you can't go around it, you got to go through it, something like that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where, like, our brain tells us, no, but you got to do this, and you have to think this, and so many of us are actually feeling this right now. You know, you talked about all of the protests and all of the work, the activity that's happening, activism that's happening right now. And there's a sense for so many people of just like, if I think through it enough, then I can get through it without really feeling it. And so much of, I think, what self-compassion is just knowing it's okay. It's okay to feel however I feel. And it's okay not to be okay. And it doesn't always feel nice, but I'm feeling it anyway. So if I let myself feel it again, then that's the way to move through it.
Right, exactly. So it's truly like surrendering into the experience and the emotions, whatever it is, you know, cradling that experience. And the other thing that comes to me too is kind of what I'm hearing you say, and maybe you can talk more about this, that so self-compassion or mindfulness practice. So, you know, none of these are really about, you know, almost like, you know, let's make it better. Like, there's this idea, like, if I do meditation, if I do compassion practice, it's all going to be fine. I'm going to be happy. Things are going to be better. There's no more suffering. And that is not true.
No.
So let's get that out of the way right away.
No, and I think, I mean, you're right. I think there's this sort of, and I think it's a publicity thing. Like, I think mindfulness is sold, or self-compassion is sold as this, you'll be calm and you'll be happy. And you see all the pictures, like the mindfulness pictures, there's always this person sitting on the beach, and they always just look like beautiful, you know, beautiful person, and they're calm, and they're just like, wind is blowing their hair or something. And the truth is that mindfulness is not about making anything happen. And it's also not about stopping anything from happening. It's the freedom of mindfulness comes in, I get to feel the thing I'm already feeling. And that is what allows me to be self-compassionate, because I don't have to change it or fix it in order to be okay. That I can be okay. I can be a mess and be okay. And so there's this sense of, it might not feel nice, but that's okay too. So we have a tendency, it's a human tendency to want things to feel good. And we often make a mistake, and I often make a mistake. I confuse feeling good with something that's positive, or more poignantly, perhaps, when something feels bad, then I think it is bad. We think it is bad. And part of what self-compassion is allowing ourselves to sit with discomfort, and knowing that just because it just feels unpleasant, it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just unpleasant. And there's something really empowering in that, to see that I don't have to react. I don't have to, you know, run away from this experience. I can just see it and allow it to be there. But all of that, I think, as you said, it doesn't come naturally to us because it's so much more natural to think things through. And it's so much more natural to see the negative more than the positive, to beat ourselves up rather than to be compassionate to ourselves. And so that's why you practice, because we're just not naturally good at it.
Right, right. It goes back to the negativity bias of the brain. Yeah.
Yep.
Can you review that just real quick? Like,
For sure.
like, physiologically, like what is that and what's going, because so many people, like, you know, I do mindfulness and compassion practice a lot in my work, but it's like the message that I hear, it's so hard, it's so hard, it's so hard.
Yeah,
And
it is
there's a
hard.
reason why it's so hard. And yeah,
Totally.
so tell us, why is it so hard, and that there's nothing wrong with any of us who think that it's hard.
Yeah. So the negativity bias, I sometimes, depending on who I'm talking to, sometimes I call it the student evaluation effect, because as a professor, I, at the end, finish the semester and I get these lists of comments from students, and, you know, most of them are lovely. Often they're really lovely. Like 99% of them can be wonderful, but if 1% is bad, 1% is negative, that will be the 1% that I remember. And so it could be the job evaluation effect. It could be, you know, 100 good things happen to you in a day, but one bad thing happens. And that's the thing that our brains hold on to. And it's not our fault. It's actually hardwired into all of us. We are evolutionarily wired to see the negative more than the positive. And it totally makes sense, right? You imagine yourself in this like tribal society, and you need to scan the environment for threats. You need to be aware that the saber-toothed tiger might be, you know, around the corner. And so our brains evolve to see the negative more than the positive in order to keep us safe. And it's actually a feature. It's not a bug, right?
Right.
Now we feel like it's a bug. But so it made sense in the time when you needed to scan the environment for threats. But the problem is our modern nervous systems can't really tell the difference between a saber-toothed tiger chasing us and someone not texting us back.
Yeah,
Right?
it feels the same.
You
Like
see those little
sometimes.
bubbles, those little dots, and it's like the nervous system gets heated and you move into this fight flight mode without even wanting to. So the first thing that I like to say about the negativity bias is it's not our fault. So you don't have to feel bad about feeling bad. And if the only thing you do with respect to self-compassion is let go of feeling bad about feeling bad, I think that that's actually most of the work, because it's so much easier to beat ourselves up when we're suffering, to think, what's wrong with me? Suffering makes us feel very isolated. What's wrong with me? I'm alone. I shouldn't feel like this. So if you can see, okay, my brain, and I say this, I use this in the book for kids, we say, like, your brain is only actually showing you part of the picture. So there's this whole other part of the picture. We just need a little bit more help to see that part too. So it's not my fault. It's my brain trying to protect me. So yay, my brain is doing what it's supposed to do. And I can see that, oh, my brain's only showing me the part of the picture that it thinks is going to help me. So I'll work a little bit harder to focus on self-compassion, focus on mindfulness, or focus on, you know, neuroplasticity, changing my brain, changing my experience to see that full picture.
Right, exactly. So this is why when information can be so powerful, like when we know that that's what's going on, we can actually be grateful that, oh wow, this is what our brains are doing. So to be grateful about that. And then what I also like kind of picked up on is, it's common humanity, it's common experience. We all have that. So let's not walk around thinking, oh, so and so is so much happier, so and so has it together, so and so, because we are all experiencing that. Just like, you know, I know that, you know, I'm a psychotherapist, and you are also working on self-compassion, mindfulness, and just because we do this work and we are so-called experts doesn't mean that we are floating on some cloud nine all the time. right? So I want to bring that here too, like
Hell no. Can I say
the
that?
struggle is real. The struggle is real for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's practice, right? It's like the first time that you ride a bike, you're not very good at riding a bike. That one actually isn't even the best example, because once you ride the bike, it's very hard to forget how to ride the bike. Maybe it's like learning a sport or playing the violin, right? The more you do it, the better you get at it. And the more, this is where neuroplasticity comes in. So our brains get good at what they practice. And our brain, because of negativity bias, our brains are just really, really good at being negative. They're really good at seeing the negative more than the positive. They're really good at beating ourselves up, right? Most of us, the stuff we say to ourselves in our heads, we would never say to anyone else. People would look at us very, like, we're like truly mean and cruel if I said to other people the stuff I say to myself. And so again, it's not the idea, well, now there's this other thing I have to feel bad about. It's, if I can see it, then I can decide. My brain is always practicing something. In every moment, our brains are always practicing. So mindfulness or self-compassion is actually empowering, because it lets us decide what we want our brains to be good at.
Yeah.
And then in every moment, I lost it, right? I made a mistake. I screwed up. I was negative. I yelled at someone. I yelled at my kid. I spent too much time on my phone, whatever it is. Do I want my brain to be good at that? Probably not. So then in the next moment, I get to keep trying. And then the next moment, and that's why no one really gets to be an expert in it, because there's always something else that you can practice with.
Right. There, sort of like, there is no end point. This is just a way of being, way of living, way of connecting with oneself and the world. And it sounds like that is where the mindfulness piece comes in too, because when we are mindful, we become aware. When we are aware, we have a choice then.
Yeah.
You know, right?
Yeah. So mindfulness isn't about being calm. It's not about being relaxed. It's about that choice. It's about seeing what my patterns are. So, right, like some people are writing in the chat, I am my worst critic, right? And I also feel that I'm more pessimistic. I also get more stuck in the negative. And part of that is just how I'm wired as someone who has depression and has dealt with that most of my life. That is what my pattern is. That's what my habits are. So the practice then is, and this is why you have to practice, because it doesn't necessarily come naturally. The practice is not trying to be optimistic or not trying to make everything, unicorns and rainbows. It's each moment seeing that choice. So I get to see my brain is practicing this thing. Like for a long time, and I had people call me out on it, that I would just call myself an idiot all the time. I didn't even know I was doing it. Like out loud, I would say, like, oh, I'm such an idiot. Oh, it's such an idiot move. And someone called me out on it. Like, do you know you call yourself an idiot all the time? Oh, no, I didn't know that.
You would never do that to another person, right?
I hope not. So, but that's where, so mindfulness lets me see, you know what, I'm doing this. Do I want to be doing it? And as soon as I say I don't want to be doing it, it doesn't mean it goes away, because it's a well-worn pathway. But the idea of neuroplasticity is that you can change your brain. So if I can see the one pathway that my brain always goes down, and I don't want to go that way, then I just start practicing going this way. And my brain will go, no, but this way is so comfortable. You're so good at it. And then they're like, yeah, but this way let's try a little bit more this way. So the self-compassion practice is just that. It's when I drop something, when I stub my toe, when I make a mistake, which I will, I get to say, I'm human. And humans make mistakes, and it's okay. And I feel really bad right now, and feeling it's okay to feel bad, and I can take care of my feelings. And my daughter and I have been using this phrase for a number of years. We say feelings come and feelings go. We just have to take care of our feelings.
Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. So, and yeah, so, and that is again going back to the practice. It's like I often see say like, you know, the negative side is almost like a well-built highway in the
Oh
brain.
yeah,
It's like, oh, smooth riding. This is so easy. And then we try to do the self-compassion and compassion and all this. It's like you have to build that road, like, you know,
totally.
clearing the way, and it's hard work.
And the other one's easier.
I know. That's why we go there. Like, ah, yeah, so much easier to go there. It's there. But it truly, like you mentioned, brain plasticity, and that's what your book is also about. Like, it is possible to build these new roads in our brain.
And it's not like, even though the road itself might feel really rocky, the practice itself, the practice is actually simple.
Right.
Like the practice of mindfulness or the practice of self-compassion they're really simple. It's not this outlandish, like I have to learn a new language, or in itself, like now I have to learn the violin. It's just like, every time you can stop and take a breath, that's the practice of mindfulness or self-compassion. Right? Every time this is really hard right now, that's self-compassion, right? Even every time you say, like, if you're in an argument with someone, you start to feel yourself getting heated and you say, I need to go for a walk, that's self-compassion. And then it's just seeing that and seeing, I need my body, my heart, my energy, my soul, whatever it is, needs something other than that, you know, the superhighway, the negative superhighway.
Right. Great. And so the other thing that I've been working on too is this, you know, and not to minimize that things are hard, because they are, but sometimes I notice, like, when I keep telling to myself, things are hard, things are hard, things are hard. Yeah, they feel hard. So I've been working on, like, what if it wasn't that hard? What if it was easy? Like, what if, you know, and then I started thinking, where is it coming from? Why is everything feeling like a struggle? And oh my gosh, I went back into my family lineage to Finland, to grandparents coming from the Russian side of Finland during Second World War, had to leave everything behind, families displaced, destroyed, and starting a new life as factory workers from being like farmers all their life. And life was about survival. That was my grandparents, my mom, same thing. Life was about survival. And then I kind of feel like I've inherited some of the same mindset. So then also looking at that message that we are telling ourselves, like, so it's a dual thing, like, yeah, be compassionate, acknowledge how you're feeling, while at the same time we can also be curious about, like, okay, what if it was easy? What if it wasn't hard? What if, like, because there's element, at least for me, I make things harder sometimes than they really need to be.
Oh yes, I'm exceptional. If I may toot my own horn, I'm exceptional at that. Exceptional at making things harder than they have to be. Exceptional at being, like, just beating myself up. I think you're right. I think it's really important. So I am a catastrophizer. It's good. I'm just like laying bare all the things that I do. I'm an exceptional catastrophizer, and I'm trying to do just that. So I go, what if this won't work out? What if they can't, what if they don't cure this? What if I can't do this? What if I fail at this? What if I fail at this? And if I can see, okay, yeah, that's that highway my brain is going down. So then what about, well, what if it does work out? And my brain goes, no, but what if, like, this one's so much easier, but yeah, what if it does work out? Or what if it is okay? Or what if you do get that job? Or what if you know, ... It could be any example. But I think that's why there's more than one step to this. So the first step is awareness, right? Just, this is where mindfulness comes in. It's, I am feeling this. And mindful self-compassion, they talk about 3 steps, 3 parts to it. There's mindfulness, there's common humanity, and there's kindness. So, and you can do this as a formal practice, you can do this as an informal practice. So when you're going through something rough and you notice, so the first step is I have to notice this is hard. And I really like the phrase, this is hard right now. So even just noticing this is a moment of suffering. It's another favorite phrase. This is a moment of suffering. This feels really hard right now. So mindfulness has to be the first step because I have to be able to see what's happening. I can't change what I can't see. So I can see what's happening. So noticing, oh, my mind is racing. Noticing what's happening in my body, in my mind, and in my heart. So even right now, I mean, we can do this, whatever you're experiencing, you can just notice, okay, what is happening right now? Eyes open, eyes closed, any posture, just what am I feeling right now? So what is happening in my body right now? There's probably some tingling. There might be some discomfort. There might be some pressure. But just noticing, this is what it feels like right now. You can notice what's happening in my mind right now. Is it busy? Is it heavy? Is it quiet? Is it negative? Lots of negative thoughts. And what's happening in my heart right now? So what's the mood or the emotion or the feeling? So our first step with any sort of awareness is that this is what's present right now. And then when I do that, then I can see I'm okay. The common humanity is I'm not alone. There's nothing wrong with me for feeling this way, right? It's not saying I have to feel this way or I should feel this way or I'm such a blank person. But I see, okay, there's a lot of discomfort right now in my belly. There's some tightness in my throat. Now my mind is telling me it's got all this commentary. You're not doing a good job. Oh, you should have said that differently. And then, but this is normal. This is okay. This is what it means to be human. And then kindness is, it's okay to feel this way. Kindness is, I can choose to see what happens next. It's also where gratitude comes in. So it's not wallowing, right? Compassion isn't wallowing. There's a difference between acknowledging and really like sitting with and sitting in, if you will. So when I talk about this, I'll back up. So the 3 steps, again, for mindful self-compassion, and there's lots of information. If anyone's interested, just Google mindful self-compassion. You'll come up with the 2 top websites have tons of information. Mindfulness, common humanity, and kindness. And when I break this down for kids, and so in the Sticky Brains book, it's the first step is there's nothing wrong with me. I don't have to feel bad about feeling bad. So that's really the mindfulness. And I guess, and common humanity. It's okay to feel this way. It's not my fault. And I can do something about it. So this is where the neuroplasticity comes in, or the what if, or the gratitude is, I can change my brain to see more of what I choose rather than what my mind automatically chooses for me. It just takes a little bit of extra effort. So if my brain automatically sees the negative or automatically beats myself up, then I can choose to focus on kindness. I can choose to notice what makes me smile as much as what makes me frown. And so I think we need all of those parts to it. That was a long-winded answer, but this idea that the awareness is the first part, the acknowledgement is the first part, and then I get to decide what I'm going to do about it. So for kids, it's you have brain-changing powers. You have a superpower. You can change. You can change your brain. And I mean, for me, the first time I heard that like you can physically change the structure of your brain just by paying attention, that's like the coolest thing I've ever heard.
That is, I know, yeah.
You
But
can
it's so true. Yeah, I
you
know.
can change your brain. You can grow
Yeah.
the gray matter in parts of your brain that you want, and you can shrink the gray matter in the alarm bell, the amygdala, the part of your brain that freaks out. And that means that we have the power to decide how we want to be with ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
It is so cool. Yeah, I'm so excited about brain plasticity too. And you really, and being, I feel very privileged and very honored to be a therapist because I see those transitions happen. So I can't see inside the brain, but when those shifts happen in the brain, it's just like, wow, like the triggers are no longer triggers. It's like something literally like switched in the brain, and it's absolutely incredible to witness.
Yeah.
So I want to talk next a little bit about what when we were doing the mindfulness practice, you included the body in it. So
Yes.
can you tell us a little bit more, like what? So why is that important? Why do we want to have the body involved, or just checking in with our bodies and what's going on there? So what's all
Yeah.
that about?
So if I turn to imagine if we were all in a, in the same room, which maybe one day, again, we will be, and I turn to all the people in this room and I can see everyone in this room. So I know that your body is here and you can feel it, right? You're right now, wherever you are, sitting on your bed or your couch or your chair, just you can feel your body's here. My body is present. It's sitting in this chair. Now, again, if I were to look around the room and ask you where your mind is, some part of it would be here, right? Some part of it is in this room. For some of us, maybe it's all in this room, but then it goes places, right? It goes to the future. It's thinking about lunch. It's thinking about groceries. It's looking outside. Our phones, right? The phone rings. I get distracted by the phone. My mind goes places. But my body is always present in this moment. And so mindfulness is actually much more about focusing on the body than it is about what's happening in your mind. So like you use your mind to be with your body, but you use your body to give your mind something to do. Because we can't, it's like, if you're upset and anyone tells you to calm down, what does that make you want to do? Right? It doesn't work. It doesn't make me calm. It just makes me more angry.
Yes.
Because I know I'm supposed to be calm, right?
Yeah. And this is I'm just going to make a quick point here.
Yeah.
Think about how often do we say that to the kids?
Yeah.
Calm down. And then parents come to me like, I don't know. I told them to calm down, but then they just like blew off the handle. Yes.
Yeah, because we do it too, right?
Yeah.
When someone says to you, like you're having a rough day and someone says like, oh, cheer up, it's such a beautiful day outside. That only makes me feel bad because I already know where I'm at. I'm having trouble sort of getting myself out of that. And then I feel worse about feeling bad. I've already felt bad about feeling bad. And we do that to ourselves all the time. We tell ourselves, I shouldn't feel this way. We do it to our kids all the time, right? We do it to everybody. So our brains, they do it out of care. Our brains do it because they want to take care of us, but they're not very good at that in those moments. And so we can't just tell our brains to stop because they need something to do. We can't just tell ourselves to calm down or cheer up because we all know that just makes us, maybe it just pisses me off more. So if you pay attention to what's happening in your body, you give your brain something to do that focuses it on the present moment. And that is largely, or can be largely, non-judgmental. So my mind's going crazy, stuff's going on, I'm buying groceries, I'm figuring out what's for lunch, I'm thinking about something that I said yesterday that I shouldn't have said, all of that stuff. And then if I can just feel my feet on the floor, This is one of my favorite practices. I've mentioned this before, and it's really good to do with anyone of any age. But right now, in this moment, check out how many toes you can feel. So not how many toes you think about, or how many toes you have, or how many toes you can picture, but literally like how many toes you can feel, like almost feeling them from the inside. So I'm going to give everyone just a few seconds and try and count how many toes you can actually physically feel. Okay. So again, if we were all in the same room, I would say, okay, who can feel 10 toes? You can actually, if you want.
Why don't you write it in the chat?
You can write it in the chat. So did anyone feel 10 toes?
Maybe 10 toes.
9? Go ahead.
Who has 9?
You can just type the number.
Yeah.
Anyone feel 8? 7? 6?
6, we have
4,
6.
3, 2, 1, you get it. Going down to 0. Anyone felt 0 toes? Yeah, until you asked us to feel them, I didn't feel them at all. Perfect. So sometimes I've had 0. I have no toes at all. There's like nothing going on below my ankles. Sometimes I don't think I've ever felt all 10. The idea with this practice is it totally doesn't matter. If you felt 0, if you felt 20, like if you felt 4, it doesn't matter how many you feel. The idea is that in that moment, you're maybe think I'm weird because I'm asking you to feel your toes, but your attention is in the present moment and it's anchored to your body in for most of us, a very relatively neutral spot. So my mind, my heart, what's happening in the world, what's happening in my home can be very activating, but my toes generally aren't all that activating. So the more I can feel coming, I will tell you the exercise. I can write it down later. The basic exercise, Bertie, is just feeling your toes. And the more you can do with your fingers, you can do with any part of your body.
I was going to ask, like, yeah, can it be any part of the body?
Yeah.
Essentially, like you could go through like all the parts of the body, almost
it can
like
be,
scanning.
and that's, yeah, body scans, just sort of feeling parts of your body is a really central exercise in mindfulness. I like doing the toes exercise because it's very quick and we just don't think about our toes.
Right. And I found it grounding because immediately my awareness goes to kind of like my bottom of my feet. And that's where we kind of ground ourselves to the earth.
Yes.
And so I really like that piece because it's kind of balances the head with the.
And that's exactly why, like, fingers are good because there's so much, so many sensations, so much so many nerve endings in your fingers. But your toes are nice because they're grounding, because they're so far away from our brains, from our heads, because they push the energy down. And whether you're big into energy discussion or not, that when you feel your toes, you let go of some of what's happening in your head.
Absolutely.
And so our bodies are really our best ally for feeling what's happening in the present moment. It's why, and it's annoying when someone tells you, when you're freaking out and someone tells you to take a breath, we don't want to hear it because we're with the momentum of what's happening, but the breath does the same thing. It's brings us back to the present moment. And your breath is actually, if you can take a deep breath, it's a signal to your nervous system that everything is okay, that you're not being threatened. So that's another practice of like a simple mindfulness compassion practice you can do. So the first one, just like feeling any part of your body in space. Really feeling your feet on the floor. For anyone who deals with anxiety, the toes on the floor is a really, really nice exercise because again, it gives you something to focus on that's concrete and that's relatively neutral. So the other one, and mindfulness folks, people like me love spending time talking about your breath or breathing or paying attention to your breathing. It's another one that can be an anchor. So we use that, the idea of your breath as an anchor. So your mind wanders off, you use your breath, the feeling of your breath, to come back to this moment. And especially any sort of exhalation, a longer exhalation, you know this, right? It's a signal to your system that you can calm down. It actually engages your parasympathetic nervous response. So you move out of fight flight mode and back into the rest and digest mode.
Could you actually guide us through a breathing practice? Let's do, whatever your favorite is, let's do one right here, because
for sure.
it's so important. And oftentimes, breathing is just breathing and we don't think about it too much. And oftentimes it ends up being shallow. But again, it's like there are so many practices. There's books written, there's seminars, there's like so much we can learn about the breath. So if you have a couple simple breath practices in your toolbox, it's incredibly helpful. So guide us through your favorite, whatever you feel might be the most beneficial.
Favorite. Okay. There are a few. I'll start out with a very basic one. And this one is asking you to just feel your breath as it is. So you don't have to change it. You don't make it special. Don't do anything to it. So just wherever you're sitting or lying or standing, you might close your eyes if that allows you to pay a little bit more attention. Otherwise, you can just take a soft gaze a few feet in front of you. You might take a few deep breaths to start off, even sighing or yawning. Those deep breaths almost feel like a massage on the inside. And then just allowing the breath to return to whatever feels normal or natural for you right now. And just taking a moment and allowing your body to feel easy. So you can soften any obvious areas of tension. And just letting go in your jaw. Letting go in the shoulders. Right? You're not forcing relaxation, you're just allowing for what you can let go of to be let go. And in the same way as if your mind is a muscle and you could just soften it, just letting go of what you don't need to hold on to right now. And then allowing your attention to rest on the feeling in your body of breathing. You don't need to make the breath special. You don't need to change it at all. Just feeling the breath. So you might find the one area in your body where the breath feels the most obvious. And that might be in your nostrils, your chest, your abdomen. And you can even take a hand and place it on that part of your body if that's helpful. And just feel what it's like to breathe. You can notice if the breath is smooth or choppy. Notice if it's long or short, deep or shallow. I'm just trying to be as curious, as interested as possible in what it feels like in your body to breathe. And of course, as you do this, you'll find that the mind doesn't stay on your breath. The mind wanders because that's what minds do. And so it's not a mistake. Whenever you notice that your mind has gone somewhere, whether that's planning or judging, worrying, just take a moment and notice, my mind has gone into worrying. And then gently, kindly, without judgment, bringing the attention back to the feeling of breathing. And just like an anchor, the wind and the waves carry the mind off. The breath is the anchor, and it brings the attention back to this moment. And you can notice if there's judgment or commentary about how the breath should be, whether you like this or not, or whether you're good at it or not. And again, just like waves on the ocean, they carry us off. And we can choose to let them go and come back to the feeling of breathing. You might notice if your breath has changed at all. You might see if you can follow one entire breath cycle. So can you feel the moment that your breath begins? Notice how that inhalation feels, how it changes into an exhalation. And can you feel the moment, the spot where the exhalation ends? And every time the mind wanders, it's an opportunity to notice and to choose your attention and your focus. And so for the last moment, you might just let go of the feeling of breathing and just come back to the feeling of sitting or lying wherever you are. And just noticing what's happening right now in your mind and your body and your heart, just for one more moment. And again, letting go of the judgment or commentary, just allowing this moment to be just as it is, being as kind to this moment, to yourself as possible. And then I'll just ring the bell once just to signal the end of this practice. And you can notice as you hear the sound how you feel now.
Thank you. I got a sense of peace and just well-being from that. I would love to hear people write on the chat how that experience was for you, so we can kind of talk about that a little bit. Yeah. And such a simple practice, just no need to change anything, just merely observing and focusing. And I totally let go of my to-do list because my to-do list is controlling me and I'm trying it not. So yeah, relaxation, like a good nap. Yes.
I will say, if you felt, and are not typing, or just felt that you didn't feel relaxed, if you felt like you didn't have a good nap, if you felt tense or stressed, or you just didn't like that at all, it doesn't mean you did it wrong. It actually means you did it right because you noticed that you felt tense or stressed or something. And so again, the idea with mindfulness is not to make something happen. It's not to reach a particular state. Calm is nice. Like calm and relaxation, when they happen, it's just a really, really nice bonus.
Yeah.
But the idea is, again, that notion of, can I be with what's happening in a way that allows me to be okay with it and to care for it?
Yeah.
So the way I talk about mindfulness is that mindfulness shows us that there are two things happening in every moment. There's what's happening, and there's my relationship to what's happening. And most of the time, I cannot change what's happening, right? I can't change this coronavirus. I can't change what's happening with technology. I can't change my to-do list. I can't change the weather. I can't change a lot of my habits from the past. But if I can see all of those, then I can choose to be calm. I can choose to accept those. So it's not making calm, but being calm about what's happening, or being compassionate about what's happening. And that relationship actually changes everything.
Yeah.
So if you felt that and you're like, no, this was crazy and I didn't enjoy it at all, it's not bad. It's just less pleasant.
Yeah.
And so you just get to trust your own experience, find your own way. Maybe it's you walk doing meditation. Maybe you focus on the feet instead. But it's not, I can't, right? For those of us who tend to tense up, we think, well, I can't do this, or there's something wrong with me for not being able to do this. No, it's just that's what you're noticing right now.
Right, exactly. So taking the pressure off of how and what it should look like. And because it's very individual. It's very individual. And again, truly just letting it be whatever it is for you, and not getting into this tense, like, oh, I gotta relax, I gotta calm down.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard for people. Like, I am a perfectionistic person. So I I gotta be perfect in meditation. Like,
you're the best meditator ever. Yeah. And so really but that's where, like, we're talking about self-compassion. That's where self-compassion comes in, is I'm feeling heaviness, or I'm feeling tension, or I'm feeling so much discomfort, or my mind is telling me I'm not good at this. But that's when I get to care for myself. Oh, it's okay. Like, it's actually telling yourself, it's okay. It's okay to feel this way.
Yeah.
That there's nothing wrong with me for feeling sad, for feeling guilty, for feeling frustrated. And then I can do something about it. Then I can decide how I want to proceed.
Yeah. And I want to tie this what I kind of mentioned in the beginning of this, like, okay, if we are accepting and loving and kind towards ourselves, we will do that to others. So I hope that you're all starting to see that, because if I can let myself be free in my experiences, in my emotions, my thoughts, my body sensations, it is also becomes easier to have that understanding and let the other person be free in their experience as well, even though it might be very different from what my experience is, and which, we all have a very different, world views, and we view the world from our own lens. We all have our own glasses on that we view the world from. Yeah. Not one world view is exactly the same, because so many factors go into that.
And I think that's where, especially for anyone who's a caregiver, whether that's for your children or someone else's children, or for someone who's older, we regulate our nervous systems to each other. So when I'm freaked out and I'm, losing it or melting down, I my child is more likely to regulate her nervous system to me, so she's more likely to get dysregulated as well. So when, for example, our kids are melting down, as you know, they are wont to do, because they're human too, then I get to, if I can regulate my own nervous system, if I can stop and take a breath, even if I'm, you know, she's going crazy and I don't know what's happening and I don't know what I'm going to do about it, if I can stop and just take a breath or just feel my feet on the floor, then I have regulated my own nervous system, which means that she is more likely to come down to my level of regulation rather than me meeting her at her level of dysregulation.
Right.
And we can do that not only for the people we take care of, but just for the people that you meet or the people that you encounter. And we allow ourselves to be more open, more empathic. And
absolutely. Yes. That is such a beautiful point, going into that co-regulation. And I talk a lot about that as I am, you know, talking about transformational parenting. And one aspect of this transformational parenting is like you make a shift just by your own ways of being. So if you show up as a loving, kind, compassionate, understanding, that in and of itself can shift the situation with your child and really with anybody, because we mirror each other. We are energetic beings that resonate with each other. So, you know, it's an empowering position to be versus feeling controlled by the child. And you know, so really, like, not starting with I need my child to change. It's about what can I change within myself in my ways of being. So beautiful. Thank you so much.
let me just offer one more thing.
Yes, please. And then we'll move on to questions and answers. I see questions on the chat. There's a couple of Q&As, and I have the email, so we'll jump into those and give people some specific. But yes, please.
So the practice of self-compassion, really, like I've said, I liken to taking care of ourselves, holding ourselves the way we'd hold a child, a baby, an animal. And one practice that's really, really nice to do with this is actually some self-touch. So you can take one hand and place it in the area of your heart, your chest or heart, as long as it's comfortable for you, of course. Taking the other hand and place it, you can't see it, but placing it in the area of your belly or abdomen. And even just sitting like this is very soothing. And we know that self-touch can have the same impact as when others who love us touch us. So you just allowing that weight to be there, and you can do a meditation like this, or you can just hang out like this for a while. Another one is actually, like, you can give yourself a hug, and there's all sorts of research that shows, you know, maybe it feels silly, but even the silliness is going to kind of get you out of that mode, that meltdown for a moment. But the one thing that I wanted to say in all of that is this idea of regulating our nervous systems and our children or the people in our lives regulating to us. So when my kid is melting down, I know that I need to take care of her and hold her and tell her it's okay, right? Like, when we're freaking out, we can't actually rationalize, like we can't hear rational arguments. So we need those few moments of just saying, shh, right? It's okay. We don't have to figure this out right now. It's all right. And if I'm regulated, then she is more likely to regulate to me as I hold her like that. So the same thing goes, and you have to sort of use this figuratively, but the same thing goes for the pain that we're experiencing inside. So if I can imagine that my pain, whatever part of me, physical, emotional, mental, if I sort of can imagine holding that pain like I'd hold my child, then that part regulates itself to the greater part of me. And so, and I actually like to do this, if you're a more visual person, you can almost imagine this idea of cradling the hurt, right? Cradling that part of you that just needs care. And so you're both the adult and the child in that case. And then that part gets to cry, and it gets to feel like our kids. It gets to cry. It gets to let go. It gets to have the good cry that we all, you know, if you've experienced them, they're amazing because you just let yourself feel that. And once something is felt, then you can move on from that. So for the practice of compassion, again, the same idea is, can I let my inner child, if you will, have that good cry?
Right. Beautiful. It's like that inner parenting. It's inner parenting.
Yeah,
Yeah. We
like
get to parent ourselves, you know, later on. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's move on to the questions. And I want to start with the chat here. Let me scroll down here a little bit. There was a question from Denise. I think we kind of maybe answered it partly, but let's go back to that. That although we all have negativity bias, we all know people who seem to see the good in every experience, you know, the optimists. Is there a way to become more like that? So I think Denise is talking about, you know, just having this attitude of seeing good in other people and having this positive, optimistic attitude. So what would you say to that?
So I'd say for that, again, there are these two parts to it. The first is allowing, acknowledging, accepting myself for who I am in this moment. So if I compare myself to how other people respond to things, I'm probably not going to feel very good about myself, personally, like me personally, because I tend to react. I tend to get very emotional. I tend to have my moment of freaking out and talking to myself. And then, you know, later I calm down. My pattern tends to be a lot of sort of this. If I compare myself to someone who's not like that, then I'm always going to fall short. And so on the first part of it is just acknowledging this is who I am and it's okay. And then yes, the answer is yes. Yes, you can become more optimistic. You can actually, like, you can train your brain to change most of the parts of ourselves. So I don't know the statistics for optimism, but there's been some studies shown about happiness and how much of happiness is genetic and how much of it is situational and how much of it is basically how much we're training our brains. And sadly, I'm going to get the statistics slightly wrong, but it's something like 40 or 50% genetic, 10% situational, and then the other 40 or 40%, no one check my math, but the other 40% is about how much you can change your brain. So what's interesting is that it's only about 10% of what you are is situational. Is it? Okay, 50, 10, 40, thank you. I was close. 10% of it is situational. So that's not to discount that when you're in, you know, dire circumstances or suffering, that your happiness will certainly suffer. It's not to downplay that. But the idea that 40% of your experience is something that you can change. So you can actually, like, happiness is a quality you can actually get better at. And so is gratitude, and so is patience. And so I have to presume, though I don't know the research on it, I have to presume optimism is the same, because we know with positive neuroplasticity, we know that the more you focus on the positive, the more you embrace or welcome or look for the positive, the more your brain will continue to see that.
Right.
So I think the first step is seeing, acknowledging, being kind to where you're at. And then the second step is, yeah, what do I want my brain to be good at? I want my brain to see the good in people more. Well, then you get to look for that.
Yeah.
Become
a seeker.
Yes. Yeah. Be a seeker for what you want to seek. So part of that for me is I spend now probably more time looking for good news than I do at the real news, right? I want to be informed. I want to know what's happening in the world, but then I search out sites. There's like Reddit subreddits for uplifting news or made me smile. There's all sorts of good news that's happening. And so I know that if I only look at the news, i.e. the bad news, then my brain will really stick to that. So I actually now make a point of spending more time on the other stuff, not just because it makes me feel better, but because it then trains my brain the way that I would like it to be trained a little bit more.
Right. That is so powerful, because that's, yeah, we have a choice. Yeah, we have a choice in that. The other thing I want to just add to this real quick is that, you know, I work with a lot of parents who are struggling with their kids, and their kids, like, behaviors are really incredibly intense. Like, we are talking about intense anger, aggression, bad words, all these things. So, you know, you get to a point like, I just don't kind of like this kid anymore. And there's a lot of frustration. It's totally normal, a lot of frustration around that. So I always talk about, you know, trying to see past the behaviors, almost like visualizing, and you're seeing your child in their highest capacity, in the nobility of their soul, and not getting stuck in the behavior level. Because when we just see the behavior, yeah, it's bad, it's really bad. But to really go beyond that, like, who is this kid in his heart? You know, who is he really? What are their gifts and aspirations? And really, like, creating a vision for your child from that place, and seeing them in their highest possibility, and respond to them from that place, and practicing that.
It's interesting because we some of the advice, I'm working on a book on positive parenting, and so much of the research I've done is exactly what you're saying. It's asking sort of not just what is the behavior, but why, right? What's motivating the behavior? What's underneath this? And then seeing this kid as a whole person. And then again, same for ourselves, right? I'm not just my worst behaviors. I'm not just for me, right? I'm not just my depression. I'm not just the argument that I had last week. And we can go even broader, right? What's happening in the world right now? If we see the worst, if we only see, for example, the rioting, if we only see the looting, which we know is only a tiny portion of the picture, then we're missing so much of this what makes us human, this greater motivation. And yeah, it's right. It is right sight. We really need to see this whole picture. And then also just that we get caught up, right? Like we get frustrated with our kids, or we get frustrated with ourselves or with the world. And that's okay. And then we can do something about it.
Right, exactly. It's like, yeah, bringing this eagle eye perspective, this larger perspective into things. Yeah. So helpful. Just, okay, let's you know, take a bird's eye view on things and see all these different aspects of what's going on. Great. Let me move on to the email questions here. So Katie says that struggling with victim mentality. You know, I realized that I have self-compassion. My mind shift on situation will be empowering. Let me see it. Quickly resort to my feelings of inadequacy, guilt, victimhood, and therefore block the good intentions. So Katie is having good intentions for self-love and compassion, but it's being blocked by feelings of inadequacy, guilt, and the victimhood.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a really good question, because, yeah, we all experience that.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot, like we could talk about that for an hour, if not a lifetime.
That's another session.
A few things I'll say is the stuff like the insecurity or the guilt or the for a lot of us, it's like not feeling like we're enough. That stuff is really deep. Like if you think about how long you've been practicing that, like decades, right? I've been practicing some of these patterns for decades. And I've been practicing self-compassion for not decades, right? Or not as consistently, certainly. So one thing that I think is helpful is to cut myself a little bit of slack. right? Like it's not, I'm a perfectionist too, and I'm impatient and I want to fix things overnight and I want it to be fine right now. And the truth is that the part of me that is feeling that guilt, or the part of me, that's actually the part that needs care. So it's the part that you think you have to get rid of in order to be okay. That's the part that we want to hold. And it's hard because it can feel really uncomfortable, and it's parts of myself I don't really want to hang out with very much. But if I can turn to that guilt or that victimhood or that insecurity and like hold that, oh, like there's so much insecurity right now and it really hurts, and I'm feeling it right in my gut, and I can even again just sort of like place my hands there and just imagine caring for that. And if it's too hard for us to do it, you can imagine the person that cares for you the most, right? The person that would hold you, the person that would tell you everything's okay. Imagine them holding you. Alternatively, if you have someone that you care for, like what would you say to your child, or what would you say to your best friend or to your partner when they're feeling that? Right? You would tell them it's okay. You would tell them that they're learning and they're doing their best. And so I think on the one hand, again, it's that idea of just really, I need to see and be able to be compassionate to the parts of me that I think are in the way. And then the other part of it is a little bit of fake it till you make it. So we also have some research or some background on this, which is like, the more I say it's okay, the more I say I'm going to be kind to myself, the more I say may I be happy, stuff like that. Even if I don't quite believe it in the moment, the more I do it, the more rote that becomes. So it might be a little bit of both. And the one work is probably going to be harder than the other, because it's hard to sit with those things we think are in the way. But there's that phrase, what you resist persists. So the more I resist looking at my insecurity, the more I resist letting that be felt, the more I'm kind of just like pushing it down, but I'm also holding on to it and actually even almost empowering it by accident. So again, Katie, if you're listening, that's obviously there's a lot more detail on that. And if you want to, I'm happy to keep talking about it with you, or connect on that, because it's such a beautiful question, because it's so heartfelt, and I think we all, I feel that certainly.
Yeah, right. But it all starts with even embracing that. So it's not about, let me eradicate this and I don't want to feel this. But really like, okay, let's begin by embracing that, truly experiencing that, kind of going there. Let's go there.
And the embracing, though, isn't, it's not all or nothing. It's like, now I'm going to tackle this. Like I had to clean my oven the other day that I maybe not have cleaned in a really long time. I get to go in and check it out, and then if it's too much, I get to back out, and then I dip my toe in the water, and then I come back out, because we don't gain anything by hurting ourselves more, or by telling like, I've got to make this work. I get to touch it in and then come back out, and then I know, sometimes I know I can sit with my feelings, and sometimes I know, nope, I need to go for a walk. And so a little bit of that as well.
It's like moving through it little by little, and coming in and out of it. I love that. Great. So one more question from Valerie. Struggling with self-confidence in all different aspects of life, like work, family, etc. Hard time accepting that I'm worth anything, that I'm competent at anything. Suffering from the impostor syndrome. Yes, many of us do. And then difficulties enjoying the now because of being too busy. So self-confidence, self-worth, and imposter syndrome, like how do we begin to connect with those and work with those?
Oh, That's such a beautiful question too. It takes so much bravery to ask a question like that. Like, and as well as the first question, it takes so much courage to see those. And that, like, I think that sort of thing we often, I skip over, right? And Valerie, maybe you do too. Like, well, I've got to deal with this, so I skip over the fact that, like, you just acknowledge so much of what's alive and what's hard and what's present for you, and that I'm blown away at the courage that takes. So I think that's part of maybe my response to it is, one is suffering makes us feel like we're alone. When I'm going through something, I forget, and I really, really do, I forget that I know some good ways to deal with it. And I forget that other people feel this way too. So imposter syndrome is one that's particularly interesting because we feel like we're the only one, and then you talk to every single other person and they feel that way too. But then if you're like me, my brain will go, no, but I have it, like, I really have it, and other people don't, like, they know what they're doing and I'm the only one who does it. So the first step, I think, is seeing that you're not alone in this. Your own interpretation of this is unique, and I don't want to downplay that. But the idea of not feeling like enough or lacking confidence and all of that, we look at other people and think they've got it figured out. But they feel the same way too.
They feel the same way.
And they can look, like, I've had this experience where I had the experience once where someone, I was in a meeting and I spoke to someone and I said something about, well, I wish I could do what you did. I'm just so shy. I'm just so introverted, something like that. And then later on, I was teaching a class and I had a student say almost the exact same comment to me that I had said to someone else. They said, I wish I could talk in front of the class the way you do. I'm just so shy, or I'm just so introverted. And I thought, like, both of us feel that, and it's not discounting that, but this idea that I'm the only one, I think, makes us feel like there's something particularly wrong with me. Mm-hmm. So part of it is seeing I'm actually not alone in this, and that my brain isn't always showing me the whole picture. So I remember every wrong thing I've ever done, but it's people need to remind me of all the things I've accomplished. So sometimes I actually recommend putting together a good things folder. Like, I have a label on my email, it's called good stuff. And when someone says something nice to me, or I get a compliment or feedback or something like that, I actually label it good stuff. And the point is to go back when I need it. I rarely remember to do that, to be perfectly honest, but it's there. And so I have evidence to counter all the evidence that my brain tells me, especially when I'm struggling.
Right.
So that's, again, this is a very important big question, but that's the first part. The second bit is to just start really small. So just 3 times today, I'm going to find something I appreciate, right? There's gratitude practice, but I like appreciation practice. So just right now, I'm just appreciating the light that I see from my window. I can appreciate, like, when you have your first sip of coffee in the morning, maybe when it's a little bit quiet, right? Just appreciating that coffee, or getting into bed at the end of the day and I just like cozying up with that blanket. That's it. So it's not like I need to write a book or solve, create a vaccine or solve a world problem. I'm just going to appreciate hugging a family member. I'm just have a piece of chocolate. This is your free reign as your homework now, is you all have to have chocolate. Have a piece of chocolate and then enjoy the chocolate, or a sip of wine or cheese or whatever
whatever it is.
But starts, like, that's the thing about gratitude or even self-compassion, is it's small. So when I miss a light, or like I'm a little bit slow at the light turns green and I'm a little bit slow, maybe I forgive myself for that. Or forgive myself for being 1 minute late to something. rather than like my whole lifetime of all the mistakes I've made. But I think that the practice that I would suggest beyond, you know, all the other things we've talked about is finding these little moments that you can actually do and repeat. So it's not, oh, like crap, now I've got this other thing I've got to practice and get good at. No, I just like, I get a break. So I just get to have a sip of water and enjoy the sip of water. Or I just get to go for a walk, take a breath. Like even just the breath can be that break. And if you start really small, then it feels easy. Like it feels like something you can actually do. And the last thing I'll say on that is if you can partner up with someone, so someone that you live with or someone you know, even just like texting someone, like your 3 gratitudes for the day, your 3 appreciations for the day. And then when you forget, because you totally will, and you'll get to your computer, or you'll get to your phone, like, crap, I forgot to do my appreciations. Well, then I can appreciate in that moment. Okay, I appreciate this very second of being able to do these appreciations. And it will build. There's just a sense of, okay, I'm just going to start out small, like baby steps, put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's such an important message that, yeah, the change doesn't have to be this huge, it's not going to be this huge leap.
Never.
It's gonna be these tiny things, and all those things accumulate. And I like to make like little jars, like you can put glass beads in it, like, you know, every day, like a moment of self-compassion, or today I was kind to myself, like put it in the jar, and then you notice like it just fills up with all these, you know, beautiful colorful beads over time. So sometimes even having something visual like that. And I also wanted to acknowledge that just by sharing, so just by Valerie's sharing this is already, you know, kind of like, because what a lot of this is shame, you know. So the worthlessness, I'm not a good person, I'm a bad person, that is shame. Shame lives in the darkness, in the secrecy. It just loves that, and it brews in there and really has a significant impact on us. But when we share that, just like Valerie did, we've already taken some of the power away from that shame. So that I wanted to acknowledge Valerie and everybody else, Katie, for saying, you know, to bring in these important questions forward, because that is already working on it. And then, like you said, Nicole, like having a buddy, having somebody to talk to about these things, so important. And just going like, hey, I feel really bad about this right now, or I feel like an imposter, I feel whatever it is. Yeah.
I mean, and that's like for someone like me who, and I work on this, I read about this all the time, and I struggle with this almost every day. I think the more we can talk about it and be brave about it, then the more we let people go, oh yeah, me too, and I'm not alone. And that's why, and we've talked about this before, Paula, but that's why that I do this work. And that's why, like, it's why I'm putting up with social media. I'm working really hard trying to understand Instagram, which I still don't, because I think we need more of that, just like, you're okay, and it's okay not to be okay. So this isn't a plug. This is actually for me to say that if anyone who is watching wants that partner to do some appreciations with, find me. I will happily do that with you. I could use the practice for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel it in your heart. I absolutely do. And so, yes, please reach out. How can people get in touch with you? Do you want to write your website or even email on the chat? And then we have, let me see.
I think these are right, but if they're wrong, I apologize.
Okay. I'm going to try to figure out. Someone raised their, I think Stevie raised your hand, and I'm trying to figure out how do I get to you? Steve, can you write your question on the chat? I lost it. It was like, I saw a raised hand and then it went away.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that. That's one's beyond me.
Like,
Yeah,
I'm constant like technical regular people who follow me that I'm always like, what am I doing? I have no idea really, but okay.
I put a bunch of ways to contact me. I will also put, the last one is the Sticky Brains book website.
Great.
It should be available on Amazon in the next few weeks, but you can pre-order. You can pre-order on our website, and if you just want more information, and we have free worksheets, and we're getting people to translate it into Spanish and German and Chinese and like all sorts of things. So yeah, anyone who would like to get in touch, if you want to talk about this stuff more or have any questions, please don't hesitate.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Oh, Steve, a phone was in the pocket. It was okay, great, thank you. Okay, well, you know what, we're gonna finish up with that, because I know we could probably keep going for another couple hours, but we will finish here. And just to recap, a couple of the main points is you know, the self-compassion practice, you know, starting with the mindfulness piece, becoming aware, connecting with the fact that this is common humanity. Suffering, pain is a common human experience, and then adding the layer of kindness to that. So that's kind of where we started our conversation today. We talked about the body as the anchor for a lot of experiences. You can use sensations, you can use your breath, doing that breathing practice that Nicole just kind of guided us through. And really that cradling, you know, that holding our experiences, whatever they are, cradling them, nurturing them, using that hand in the heart and the belly. It's kind of, when I first started studying this, and it was kind of funny because, like, you know, they did all this research and science, like what's the most calming thing, what can calm people down, like they were on this hunt for this, and it's really simple. It's just this.
I do this all the time.
Yeah, me too.
And you can do the belly one, you can do in public, especially, and no one knows. People might think you have a stomach ache, but no one knows that you're doing anything because your hands are just sort of naturally resting on your belly.
Yeah. And what I've noticed too, that after some, you know, doing this breathing practice, and I do yoga, my body naturally does that. I don't even notice it anymore, but throughout the day, I suddenly like take this huge big breath and exhale. I'm like, gosh, that just felt good. So sometimes it does change and kind of starts going more into that sort of autopilot. So and realizing, yes, it is a practice, but you know, take it as something that like we talked a little bit, like, yeah, part of it is we can experience it, it is hard, and acknowledging that, but also putting in the layer of, like, you know, what if it is, you know, what if it's hard is a story we tell ourselves. Like I tell myself that all the time. Again, it's related to my family background. So changing that, and knowing that there's no golden end point to this. There is no, like, one day we are in nirvana or have achieved enlightenment or something like that. That's not even the point. The point is moving through life, being able to experience every experience of life and accepting that. And that is the beauty of life in and of itself, is in that.
Yeah, just thank you, and just a reminder that, yeah, this is not like I'm gonna get there, that it's both a lifelong practice, but that also means that in every moment you get another chance. So if you messed up or missed the last one, then there's another one, and then there's another one, right? That's why breath is so nice, because I forgot to take that breath. Okay, well, there's another one that's coming there. So there's hope for all of us.
Yes.
And yeah, just doing our best to be as kind to ourselves and to others really as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. I am so grateful for you, Nicole. I am so absolutely grateful that our paths have joined and that you were in my summit and now we are doing these things together. I think your work is so, so important because your heart is in it. And we you know, we get to do these things together. We support, like, you know, yeah, we are here talking about these things, but we get so much from you guys being here today.
Oh, yeah.
So much. So it really is a community where we can like lift each other up in these ways. So thank you again. Have a
Thank you,
blessed,
everybody.
beautiful day with lots of nice breaths in there and seeing the beauty around you.
Thank you. Thank you, Renata. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, everybody. Bye bye now.
Bye.